What up, guys? I am Lou. Today, guys, we're going to be talking about how to generate one file from a AWS Glue Job that we have. So we're exporting out data from Redshift to an S3 bucket. By default, pretty much what happens is it would generate mini files with no file extension and a random generated name. So we're gonna change that. We're gonna modify it to generate a specific file name that we want with a file extension, and we want everything to be under one file. So that's what we're gonna be doing in this video. But before we get started, guys, give me a like, give me a follow, man. I appreciate it. Again, hit that like button, give me a follow. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, guys, so in one of the previous videos that we made, my bad, not a video, the part of the live stream that we did, we ended up creating AWS Glue Job. So let me go to that. And we created this job called Sales Redshift RS to S3, right? So let me go ahead and click on it. Let's go to the scripts. Let's click on edit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this to text editor. Because it's kind of hard to see, right? So because it's hard to see, let me go ahead and paste it and we'll edit it here. Let me change the word wrapping. Boom, there you go. Okay. So we have a job already created, which is this job here, and ultimately what it's doing is taking data from S3, from a table from S3 bucket, and we're exporting that data out to an S3 bucket, which is this bucket here. Now, as you could tell, we take a look at the files form, the file name. It's just some sort of random generated name, which is called run, some kind of sequence, some kind of identifier, right? Part and some sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Now there's no file extension either, and on top of that, you could tell mini files, right? So in most cases, this is actually fine. Like there's no issue with this, but sometimes there may be a need where, hey, I need it all in one file, which is number one. Number two, I also need it to be renamed or named to be the specific file format, like a specific name. And then B, or I guess C, I want the file extension to be part of it. And there are some benefits to that, of course. When you have let's say in this case, these are CSV files. If you have a file extension of .csv, if you have a program like Excel, right, for example, installed, when you double click, it'll open up in Excel. Now, these are CSV files, like the data itself really is CSV, but when you double click, it's not going to open up in Excel. It doesn't know what application to use to open it up because it does use the file extension. So that's kind of one of the benefits of having it, right? So what we're going to do, we're taking our script that's being utilized for this job, and we're going to make some tweaks to it, right? We want to have all of our data not to be partitioned. So what that means is we don't want to have many files. We just want one big file. So that's number one. Number two, we're going to have some logic of renaming our file. Like, there's not a way when we're using write dynamic frames to actually specify the file name you want to, you want to give your file. Like, you cannot specify a specified file name. So in order to kind of work around that, we're going to actually do a renaming. We're going to rename the file and then, of course, delete the original one. So we'll take a copy, rename it, and then, of course, delete the original one. It's a workaround. In this case, it works fine. I want to, in some cases, it may add some overhead. It just depends. But ultimately, that's what we're doing here. So what we're going to do first is let's address the issue, which is going to be we want our file to generate one extract only. We don't want many files. We just want one output, right? So what we're gonna do, if I go to my my data source, this is where it's again This is my my database name, which is called dev public sales. So just kind of show you where this is coming from. If I would go to Redshift, let me go ahead and click on my cluster, Redshift cluster 1. Let's go, better yet, let's go to query editor 2 version 2. So we'll see in here we have a database. Yeah, let me make it a little bit bigger. So we have a database called dev, and then inside dev we have public, and then we have a table called sales. Where is it at? There goes sales, right? So that's kind of where this comes in, right? I created my table name, and it's called, in this case, it's pretty much is the database schema and then table sales. So what I'm doing is, as we put in this data, I don't want it to be repartitioned to many files. I'm really just I want one partition file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this data source equals data source dot what is it, repartition 1. So that's what it's going to be, right? It's going to be data source repartition 1. Now by doing this, what happens is it's going to end up creating one partition only of the file or data set, which means it keeps everything into one extract, right? So that solved that issue. Now what it doesn't solve, though, we need to solve the renaming piece, right? Like now we need to rename our file, because again, right as of right now, the way it's going to look like this run, with random generated number without any file extension numbers. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to import in Boto3. Since this is running in AWS Glue, this package is already part of that service, so you don't need to try to bring it in. It's already part of the service, so it's good to go. So I'm going to create a client, and it will be Boto3 client, and in this case is S3. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the S3 client. So if you're not familiar with Boto3 package, you could connect to Glue, S3, pretty much all the web services, all of the services that AWS has. You most likely could connect with this package and kind of control, right? Start an EC2 instance, shut it down. The list goes on and on what you could do with it. So, all right, cool. So we got our client. So a few things that I'm going to set up is going to be my bucket name. What else am I going to set up? My prefix. So I'm going to set up my prefix name as well. I'm going to call this new file name. So this I'm going to call something like sales. Just call it sales export CSV for now, right? Whatever you want to call it, but that's what we're going to call ours. Okay. So what I'm going to get here is, let's do something like, I'm going to call this response. This is going to call our client. So it'll be client list objects. And then of course, what we're going to be looking for is going to be bucket, which would be bucket name. And the next one will be prefix, and this will be the prefix object name that we have over here, right? So ultimately, bucket name, to see what bucket name is going to go to, let's go check it out, right? It's going to be this guy here, this SharePoint ETL. I mistyped it, but that's fine. At least you get what it is. So this is our bucket name. So the prefix name is going to be, what that represents is this, right? So if I go to my bucket, I have two folders in here, right? One of them called staging and unload. I'm gonna click on unload. Then I have another folder called sales, right? So those are it's what's considered my prefix name. Think of it as your subfolders, right? So in this case, I have two. I have unload and then sales. So ultimately, that's what I'm going to be putting here, right? It's going to be unload / sales. Okay, so now that we have that, as I get my response back, keep in mind, this is getting the list of objects from my bucket, right? This being my bucket here, like this bucket and this subfolders. Now, we already configured up here on top that we're only going to get one file. We're only getting one file. So because we know that we're only getting one file in that bucket, this is where I will do something like name, what is called it, like object, file name. This would be the response, and let's see, it would be context index 0 because I want the first one. So this will be the context index 0 because again it's the first object that we're going to be looking for, because we're only going to have one object anyways, right? Index 0, then of course the key. Now, assuming that that's not the case, you had many files you want to rename, this would actually be more set in a for loop. We would have to iterate over, right, each object by index, and then from there we would get each key name renamed. But we're not doing it. In this case, we know we're generating one file, and we're gonna just grab the first index, which is 0, which is the first file, right, to be able to rename. So that's kind of what we're doing here. So let's see. So one thing I need to do here, I'm gonna put in my copies, a copy source. This is what's going to be used when it comes to copying the object, right? So in this case, it would be bucket. Then of course it will be bucket name, key, and this would be file name. All right. So let me see what else. What we're going to have to do here, let's call our client again. So it'll be client copy object, and in this case we're doing bucket equals bucket name, copy source equals copy source, which is this right here. So this is saying what are we copying, right? We're going to copy this key file that's coming from this bucket. So that's what we're doing here. And then we're going to have to specify a new name, and this will be under key. So in this case, I'm going to call this prefix plus new file name, right? So again, it's going to get loaded into this subfolder that we have here. Think of it as subfolders. It's really acts differently in S3 bucket, but just from our view, right, just from what you're probably used to, think of it just your subfolders, and then of course your on where it's going in this case. So in this case, so I do need to put a / under the file name, right? Because again, all of this is going to get concatenated together. So I need a / and then of course the file name. And then the next thing is going to be, oops, I misspelled. Client. The next thing will be client delete object, and in this case, same thing will be bucket name, key, file name. So again, this file name is the original file name, and this is going to get deleted. Whereas this one, we're copying the original file name, but we're giving it a new name, right? We have new name, which is this guy. So now that we have that set, let's go ahead and copy this. And let me go to, where is it? There it goes. My my job, and I'm going to go ahead and replace this script with the changes that I made, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Do you see this in action? I'm going to delete all the files that I have already. So what should happen here once we run the job, there it goes, is empty. Now what should happen if things work properly, to make sure it's saved, and I'm going to hit run. If everything works successfully, it should generate one file, and then it should clone that file. But when it clones it, it's actually giving it a different name, a name that we specified with file extension, and then it should delete the original file. That's what it should be doing, right? Which ultimately gives us what we're trying to solve, which is, in this case, we want to generate one file only, but we want to be able to specify a unique name, like a specific name, file name with file extension, right? That's kind of the main goal that we're trying to do here. So let's see, this is running. Let's see this in action. Yep, there it goes, it's still running. So it should take around a minute, 17 seconds if there's no errors, right? So we'll see how long it takes. So we're at 40 seconds. Oh, we got an error. What happened? Data frame objects had no so what happened here? I think I spelled it wrong. Oh, I did, dude. I spelled this wrong. This is supposed to be an I, not an A. Let me make sure. Repartition. Yep. There it goes. That was my mistake, man. I spelled it wrong. So now let's go back and let's modify. Let's go to scripts. Let's hit save. And now let's hit run again. And again, that happens, right? That happens sometimes. That's part of the... It's always tough to get it right the first time, but there's no need to get it right the first time, because ultimately it's more so about once you identify the error, fix it, and then you move on, right? And that's kind of what we did here. So now let's see. Okay, so give it a few more seconds and hopefully everything should be good. And again, guys, that's part of being a developer, where you're gonna have sometimes something so small you forget a comma, you forget to indent something, right? Like when we're dealing with Python anyways. Other languages, you know, not so much. Other languages may be a comma, maybe something, right? So it's just part of the process that happens, and that's fine. All right, so let's see if this is running. Okay, so it did not error out so far. So far, it's still going, which is good. And it should take about a minute and 17 seconds or so. There it goes. So it's been a minute so far. So far, so good. No errors yet. So there we go. Succeeded. Boom. So now let's go take a look at it. If we go to the bucket, hit refresh, there you go. So we have one file, which is what we called it, right? Sales export.csv, and it has the name that we provided. So again, we solved our issue. One file, the name that we wanted, with a .csv extension. So we pretty much hit all the marks that we're trying to do. So, and again, these are one of those what I call very specific use cases where sometimes you may have to deal with it, sometimes you don't, it just depends. But again, we solved the problem. Hopefully, guys, this helps out. The reason why I made this video was I did get a request from a viewer. So by all means, guys, if y'all have anything, any issues that y'all want me to help y'all out with, email me at contact@imlu.net. I'll add it to the list of videos to make. And again, this is one of those videos where it's a... realistically, there may not be a need to do what we did here, but there are sometimes some business cases where you need to do it. So if you're ever in that situation, at least hopefully this video should help you out on how to do that, right? And that's what I'm trying to do here, guys. I'm trying to help out where I can, provide the knowledge that I know. I don't know everything, but whatever I do know, share my knowledge with y'all. And yeah, man, just kind of try to build a nice community where we could all help each other out as well. Again, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Give me a follow, give me a like, and peace.